guys, so this is the new Zenbook 14X Pro OLED, and this is my new editing laptop. I thought I'd give my thoughts on this because why not? I like reviewing stuff I like. So in this video I'm going to cover most of what this laptop has to offer. At the same time I'm going to be testing it in Davinci Resolve because that is the editing software that I use, and I'm also going to be testing it mainly with 4K 4:2 10-bit clips all the way from 24 to 120 frames per second because that is the resolution and the frame rates that I usually shoot in. At the same time I'm going to be testing it in gaming as well because I do enjoy them games from time to time. I know there's not a lot of reviews on this laptop out there, and the few reviews that are out there are mainly by people who is promoting the laptop that got it sent to them by Asus. So I don't trust these people, I do my own tests. In this video I'm going to be focusing on testing this laptop mainly with the stuff I do, as I said, Davinci Resolve, gaming, gonna touch a little bit on Photoshop and Lightroom as well. And in the end I'm going to give my thoughts on why I chose this laptop over the competition and what the deal breakers was for me. Now because you clicked this video, maybe you are looking into buying this laptop yourself, so maybe hopefully this video will clear some things up for you. So without any more time wasting, let's just dive straight in. So this is a 14-inch laptop and the weight of this is only 1.6 kilograms, and the price on this thing is so different from country to country, so I actually advise you to check up on that yourself. I found it to be quite expensive here in Norway, like everything else. Buying mine on sale actually for 2,033 euros, and as I said, I think this is expensive. Even on sale, considering what I think you can get it in other countries, so I advise you to check your own country for the price. Talking about the design on this, I find it to be very attractive actually. It has a really nice black metallic shine to it, with this dirty discreet logo on the side here, and when you are ready to touch it and press some keys, you will feel that those keys are very satisfying to press. Now for the ports, on the left side we have the power port, and next to that we have the HDMI 2.1, and then a USB-A Gen 2 port, and at the end we have the microphone headphone jack. On the right side we find all the stuff that really makes me happy, starting off with a full-sized 4.0 SD card reader that provides super fast transfers from your SD card, which is great to have when you are working with big 4K files like I do. Next to that is a USB-C 3.2 Gen 2 port and a super exciting Thunderbolt 4 port. This is big. This port can do everything a display port can do, but the difference here is that it can do so much more. A Thunderbolt port can actually support up to 2 4K monitors and one 8K monitor with a 60Hz refresh rate. And this port is absolutely incredible when it comes to speed in terms of file transfers, but to fully take advantage of this, you gotta make sure that you have a cable that supports Thunderbolt. The same with the SSD, make sure that also supports Thunderbolt. But there is more, it also can output up to 100 watts of power, which lets you quickly charge your phone, your tablet or other devices you wish to charge, or you can use this to actually charge your laptop, which makes it easier to leave the laptop adapter at home. But for more heavy workloads I do highly recommend having the adapter plugged in because the PC will perform much better when you have the adapter plugged in. Alright, so let's touch on the display here, which is going to be the biggest winner in this review. And this is a display you actually can touch and also has pen support, which I know is a big deal for a lot of people out there, but do be aware that not all the laptops or not all the Zenbook 14X Pros has the touch display. And I know that not all people like the touch display either, so that's a good thing. But Jesus Christ, this display is absolutely the most beautiful display that I've ever seen and used. But I warn you, when you start going for displays like this, you will never want to go back to anything else. This is a stunning 2.8K OLED display which has a 16:10 aspect ratio, which will give you that little extra satisfaction than what a 16:9 can provide. It also has a response time of 0.2 milliseconds and a refresh rate of 120 Hz. It also has a 550 nits HDR peak brightness, and the color gamut is 100% DCI-P3, which is exactly what you want to see in a creator laptop. And something to be aware of here is that the touch display version of this laptop has a peak brightness of 550 nits, while the non-touch display actually has a peak brightness of 600 nits. This is something I learned after I bought this laptop, so that is definitely something to be aware of. Okay, so let's take a look at the specs and the upgradeability. So here are multiple versions you can get of this laptop. This is the lower end of the versions you can choose from, which is the i7 and the 4060 with 1TB M2 NVMe SSD and 16 GB of RAM. But you can get it with a 4070 and an i9 processor. I didn't go that route, and the reason for this is because when I did the research on this laptop before I bought it, I realized that the gap between the performance gap between the 4060 and the 4070 in a laptop is so small that I couldn't justify the price difference. And they both have 8GB of VRAM. Now, if this was a discussion about the performance gap between a 4060 and a 4070 on a desktop, on the other hand, we would be having a different conversation. The same with the processor. They both have 14 cores, 20 threads. The only difference from the i9 to the i7 is that the i9 has a little better clock speed, but I don't think that is enough for it to be that noticeable. So that is the reason why I chose the lower end of the two. And I hear that the i7 actually has better thermal performance, but I cannot confirm that. In terms of memory and storage, as I said, I went with 16GB and 1TB, which I don't think is enough for a beauty like this, which brings me over to the upgradeability. So in order to open up this laptop, there's a total of 10 screws, 9 around the frame and 1 in the center, and I advise you to use something plasticky like this plastic card to pop it open. So when we take a look inside here, I'm very happy to report that you can upgrade the memory on this laptop. It has 16GB already soldered in that you can't do anything about, but it has a free slot where you can install another 16 or 32GB, which gives you a maximum of up to 48GB of RAM, which is awesome. This is exactly what I've done, but in this review, I've done all the performance tests with the 16GB of RAM that was already soldered in that came with the laptop. Now, the reason you want to consider upgrading the memory yourself is because a lot of times I find that you can actually save a lot of money by doing it yourself instead of customizing it up to 48GB of RAM when you buy the laptop. Now, be aware that if you decide to go down this route and do it yourself, you need to make sure that the RAM you're buying is actually compatible with the laptop. I'm gonna leave a link in the description for the 32GB of memory that I bought, which I know to be compatible with this laptop. The same with the storage. I went with the lowest possible, which was 1TB, because I do plan to upgrade that as well in the future when the economy is right. Taking a look at the cooling here, it's pretty impressive. We have 3 heat pipes that are shared between the CPU and the GPU, with a 4th one dedicated to the graphics card. The heat is also dissipated by 4 heatsinks and 2 fans. And finally, looking at the battery, this is a 76 watt-hour battery. Moving on to the sound is pretty good. At least it sounds very good. It has dual speakers with Dolby Atmos support. Definitely the best sound I have heard coming out of a laptop. Haven't owned many laptops though, so I take that with a grain of salt, but it does sound very good, and what I can hear from other people reviewing this laptop, they are also happy about the sound. Alright, moving on to battery life. Not good, not great, not terrible. It's pretty average. Now, if you are doing heavy gaming and heavy editing or heavy workloads, the battery will drain really fast without the adapter. I'm not gonna sit there and lie, the battery will go down super fast. But if you are using it for like normal light work and you are doing or you are watching some videos, you can get pretty decent battery life out of it. I've watched plenty of episodes on HBO in bed, and I think I got around 7 hours out of it. So there's no problem with that. It's pretty good when it comes to that stuff. The thing to remember here is that when you buy a great laptop like this with a good processor, with a good GPU and a great display like this, you are going to have to make some sacrifices in terms of battery life. Now, if you value battery life the most, you are probably going to have to give up some of the good stuff that you get here. That is life. We all have to pick our battles, sadly. So, testing the webcam, it's pretty good. It's full HD. But it is a webcam, so you can only expect as much. But with that said, it's definitely one of the better webcams you can get on a laptop. And the sound as well, the inbuilt microphone, it's pretty decent, but I can hear that it does pick up a lot of background noise. But again, what can you expect? And the sound as well, the inbuilt microphone, it's pretty decent, but I can hear that it does pick up a lot of background noise. Alright, so here we are in Davinci Resolve, testing it out for editing. Here we have the timeline is 4K and the playback is 1080. And here I've gathered a bunch of clips. Gonna start off with the lowest one, which is going to be H.264 4K, 24 frames per second. It's a clip here, shot in the forest, and playback here is extremely smooth, very nice. Nothing to complain about here. Everything here is super smooth. So that's something I'm really happy to see. Just a quick reminder that this is with the 16GB of RAM. So moving on to 4K 60. I'm really curious about this one. Really curious about this one.
Wow, that's kind of surprising actually. It is super smooth here in 4K 60 as well. I am quite surprised by this actually. It is super smooth. That is great news. Absolutely fantastic news. Alright, moving on to some 4K 120 clips. Some clips I shot at the gym. This is definitely where we're gonna see some issues. Yeah, this is already very... Compared to 24 and 60 frames per second, we do get some choppy playback here. Not very smooth, but definitely not the worst in the world. Alright, so for 4K 120 clips, I usually use proxies anyways. So I'm curious to see, let's try and generate some proxies here and see how fast that will go. So with the proxies generated, everything is super smooth as expected and definitely is all I need for my workflow. 100% happy about everything here. I also brought some Mavic 3 Classic clip, which is H.265. This is 24 frames per second. Extremely smooth as well, no surprise here. And I'm also going to check another clip, which is also from the Mavic 3 Classic, which is 120 frames per second. I'm very curious about this clip because this clip is actually shot in S&Q mode, and as you can see, it is super smooth, even though it's 120 frames per second. And the reason for this is, as I said, it's because I shot in S&Q mode, which means that it's lower quality. It compresses the file more. So that is the reason why it is so smooth. Alright, so we're going to test the render speed as well here, and we have a total of 1 minute of 120 frames per second clips, and I'm curious to see how fast this will go. So I'm going to add this to render queue. And that took a total of only 48 seconds, which isn't too bad. So overall, very happy about the editing performance coming out of this laptop. Moving on to Photoshop. I'm not going to spend so much time in here. Photoshop, everything here is super smooth. There is nothing, absolutely nothing to complain about when it comes to Photoshop and this computer. The same goes with Lightroom. Not going to spend too much time in here either because it is absolutely fantastic for these kinds of tasks. Alright, so moving over to some games in Rocket. Starting off with Rocket League, we have everything on full settings here, and we do get a constant refresh rate of 120 frames per second, very smooth. Bumping it up to another game, Dead by Daylight, everything here on Ultra as well. Chasing Steve here, and pretty decent FPS here as well. Steady 70, around 70 FPS, which is good. Then moving on to another game, PlayerUnknown's Battlegrounds, everything on Ultra here. Very smooth, very nice, getting good FPS here as well. Also, we have that 0.2 seconds response time, which is gonna come in handy when playing these types of games. Alright, so bumping it up even further to my favorite game of all time, Elden Ring, and here we're gonna run into some issues, I assume. Gonna put everything on maximum and no ray tracing because that will introduce lag. So getting a stable 40 FPS isn't too bad with everything on maximum settings. This is definitely playable, so if I need more frames, I will just turn down the settings a bit. Alright, so bumping it up to Red Dead Redemption 2, this is a very demanding game. Settings here are pretty high, and we're using around 5 gigabytes of VRAM. So all these games are definitely playable, very good news, and keep in mind that I didn't go into any large cities or any place where there was a lot of action, so there are probably going to be worse performance in those areas. But overall, pretty good, pretty happy, and pretty satisfied about the gaming on this laptop. Definitely good enough for me.
So the closest competitor that I could find when I was looking into buying a new laptop was the Asus ROG Zephyrus G14. I know there's a lot of people out there that are comparing these two laptops against each other. There's a lot of people that are very torn between these two in order to what to get. What I can say is the reason I went with this one was pretty simple when I sorted things out. For instance, the ROG Zephyrus G14 doesn't have a full-sized SD card reader, which is kind of big to me. And the second was that it was actually a little bit more expensive than this one. The third one was the memory. It only had 32 gigabytes versus this 48 gigabytes, and you couldn't upgrade the RAM on that computer either, so whatever you choose when you buy it is what you are stuck with. And lastly, the display and the design on this I do actually like a little bit better. That is of course a small thing, but it did weigh in. Alright, for the cons of this laptop, there isn't many, but there are something that really bothers me, and the first one and the biggest one for me that really bothers me is This is a huge fingerprint magnet. I knew that before I bought this, but I didn't know it was going to bother me as much as it did when I got it. I feel like I don't want to touch this laptop. Like every time I need to touch it, I feel like I need to put on gloves. That's how bad it is. Of course, this does not matter in terms of performance, what I actually need it for, so it is what it is. Second con is when you do heavy workloads or heavy gaming, you will hear that fan noise. That fan noise can get really loud and the laptop will get fairly hot as well underneath it, so be aware of that. But the fan noise overall is pretty good, I would say. For normal use, you won't be bothered by the fan, that is my conclusion. Now the third con, this laptop, as I said, has pen support. I wish they could have included a pen. Not that I use pen that much, but I know, as I said, that it is important for other people, and I wouldn't mind actually use the pen a little bit myself. And lastly, the battery life. It's average, as I said. I wish it was better. It was definitely balancing on that fine line where I might have been struggling a little bit more to buy this laptop, but it is good enough for me. So final thoughts on this laptop and what I think of it. Of course, I think this is a good laptop because otherwise I wouldn't have bought it. And the deal breakers for me when I was looking into buying a laptop was, first of all, it needed to be good for 4K editing and gaming, which this is. The second deal breaker was that it needed to have a really good display that was 100% color accurate, and there's nothing to say about that here. Another big deal breaker for me was that it needed to be 14 inches, it needed to fit my ecosystem and complements the rest of my camera gear, which by being lightweight and easy to carry, which this definitely is. And lastly, it needed to have decent battery life, which is going to be the biggest drawback from this laptop for me, but I still think that it's good enough and all the good stuff on this laptop really outweighs that. So next to that was a full-sized SD card reader and a Thunderbolt port. This has that. And lastly, something that was kind of a bonus to me was the design. I wasn't really paying that much attention to the design, but luckily for me, I do like the design on this, so that was kind of a bonus, but I would have gotten this regardless if I didn't like the design, but it's good to like the design. Alright guys, that is going to be it. Hopefully this video cleared some things up for you if you are looking into buying this laptop. If you are, please leave a comment below what you think of it, and if you're not buying it, please let me know what other laptop you are looking into buying. Don't forget to hit the like and subscribe button on your way out, and I'll see you guys in my next video. Be safe and edit fast. Take care.